What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking price reveals. We have now had a price reveal for every single team in the Premier League for this season. So that should be it now. I'd be very surprised if the game doesn't launch tomorrow. So what I'm going to do in this video is talk through the remaining teams that we haven't already gone through, just some thoughts, reactions, how the template is shaping up, the key decisions that we're going to have to make towards game week 1. And then hopefully tomorrow we can start talking about the game, look at the rest of the prices, initial reactions, first drafts, value players, and all that good stuff. One thing before we jump into this, you can now update your details on the FPL site. So if you go and try and log in, it will ask you to update your club, your email, your password, and stuff like that. That is them getting ready for launch. So the game should go down at some point between the time you watch this video and hopefully release tomorrow. And then when it's back up, we'll be able to start drafting our team. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Give this video a like if you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button. Let's talk about the remaining teams. So let's talk about Spurs first. There was quite a bit of anticipation around them. What position would Son be? How expensive would he be? Would Kane come in alongside Haaland at the same price? What about Perisic? Would he definitely be a defender? How much would Conte's wing-backs be? We have all that information now, so we're going to talk through that. Really quickly though, just on fixtures, because we will do a video about fixtures during pre-season. But they're pretty good for Spurs, right? I know Chelsea away in game week 2 is like a bit of a mark against their fixtures. To have that kind of, probably what, the third toughest fixture, maybe fourth toughest fixture you're going to have all season, you know, behind Liverpool, obviously playing Spurs as well, and Man City. In game week 2 is not great, but Southampton, Wolves at home is not that bad, Forest and Fulham, all in the opening 6. They're pretty good, right? Let's talk about Son first. So he's 12 million. That is a correct price. I think based on what De Bruyne was priced at, Son could not be any cheaper. And obviously you do need all the prices to give context around some other prices that have been given. But as soon as I saw De Bruyne at 12, I did say Son would have to be 12 as well. And based on 200 plus points the last 2 seasons, he absolutely smashed it last year. He had to be that price. The funny thing is, obviously people will change their minds over the next month. I've not seen too many people say they're going to go for him, but I feel like if he was 11.5 million, lots of people would. So just 0.5 million can make a big difference into how people picture players. I think Kane's a weird one because I don't actually think that he should be any less than De Bruyne, to be honest with you. I know he's a forward, but he got 192 points last year, and that was in a season where there was a lot of sulking going on, all the City stuff early on, and he only got one goal, 1 assist in the opening 15 game weeks. Now, I know people will say he starts slow, but I think the City stuff really played a part in that. And obviously, Conte wasn't there from the start either. I think he could really hit the ground running, him and Son. So in some ways, I think him being cheaper than Son and De Bruyne, bearing in mind he's got penalties, is actually not a mistake, but I feel like he's a little bit underpriced. But to be the same price as Haaland creates a really good discussion point because the opening game, Southampton at home, is better than Man City's, who got West Ham away. But in game week 2, it's just that Chelsea away fixture where City have Bournemouth at home. So it's going to be a tough one. I think for the opening 6, given that we know what Kane's all about in the Premier League, definitely on penalties, going to play like 90 minutes most games, there might be a case to say he's a better option than Haaland. I still think I'll probably end up with Haaland, but I'm going to talk about that a bit more. So I kind of like Kane's price, although I think he could have been 12 million, no issue at all. Perisic does come in as a defender. He has been playing wing back. Some people thought he was going to be a midfielder. It makes sense to make him a defender. 5.5 million is quite cheap. Right? And I do think he's going to play a lot of games. The only thing is, and I have said quite a bit, that I don't think the 5 sub rule really changes too much who we pick. And I still stand by that for the most part. But with Conte, with the wing-backs, the way they have to play, now he's got 5 subs, he might make wing-back substitutions more often. And if they start being before 60 minutes, that could get a little bit annoying. I don't expect that to happen too much, but it's just something to think about. But with those fixtures, his pedigree for scoring goals, getting assists, I think he will be an absolute lock in that left wing-back position. Perisic looks a really, really good price at 5.5 million. And I think the way it's going right now, a lot of people are looking at 4 or 5 defenders. It's actually getting to the point where it's difficult to choose which 4 or 5 there will be. So I like Perisic's price. It's only 0.5 million more to get Chilwell or James though. So again, a good discussion point to have later on. Looking at the rest of the prices, Lloris comes in at 5.5. I think he had to. He was the second highest scoring goalkeeper last year. We know that Alisson is 5.5. I'm pretty sure Ederson is going to be 5.5 as well. Every other goalkeeper 5 or less. I think that probably prices Lloris out for me. Obviously, he's nailed on. He's not going to miss games. But if I'm looking at goalkeepers, if I have Lloris or I have Perisic, I'm going to go for Perisic. I know he's not a goalkeeper, but if I'm going to have a Spurs defensive option, I'd rather have Perisic and just go for a different goalkeeper. Elsewhere, the prices are interesting. Sessegnon's only 4.5. So if Perisic gets injured and Sessegnon suddenly becomes nailed, 4.5 million is very cheap. Doherty's only 5 million as well. Now, before his injury, he was the first choice right wing back under Conte. They are in the market for another one as well. So I don't know whether he will start the season, but at some point, again, not necessarily in game week 1, but at some point this season, Doherty at 5 million under Conte in that Spurs team is going to be incredible value. So hopefully he becomes an option quicker or sooner rather than later. If he's an option from game week 1, arguably he's a better pick than Perisic, I would say, but it's pretty close. You could maybe even argue going for 2, but we're going to have to wait and see how they kind of set up in pre-season, what transfers and stuff they make as well. Elsewhere, like Dyer at 5 million, Romero at 5 million, they're okay prices, but I just think the way the rest of the defender prices are, you'd probably go for a different 5, or you would just go and spend 0.5 million more for Perisic, I reckon. Kulusevski is the other one at 8 million, so he goes into the 8 million club. Diaz, Mount, Maddison, who we'll come on to in a minute, Saka, they're all 8 million. I think a lot depends on how Richarlison fits in, because looking at it, Son's going to play on the left. He could play through the centre, but he usually plays off the left. Kane's through the middle. And Richarlison's usually either centre forward for Everton or off the left as well. Maybe he's going to be used on the right. Maybe Kulusevski's going to be used as a wing-back. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. My thought was that Richarlison would come in as more of a squad player, to be honest with you. But we're going to have to wait and see. So there's probably just, right now anyway, it might change by August 5th. There's too many doubts about Kulusevski's minutes. But if he plays a similar amount as he did last year, he could still be really good value for 8 million because he was a great player, lots of attacking returns last year. I wouldn't completely write him off, but I think there's some concerns around his minutes. The first 3 players, though, Kane, Son and Perisic, all really good. I can see myself starting with 1, maybe 2 if I go for Kane over Haaland. But look, there's a long time to kind of deliberate over that. Okay, so let's move on to Leicester. 3 key players they showed us first was Maddison, Vardy and Harvey Barnes. I will say the fixtures are not looking too good for Leicester. I think Arsenal away, Chelsea away in the opening form. Man United, if they can get their act together, Brighton away. It's not great, and I don't see too many of us having Leicester players. Not from the off anyway, maybe later on. Again, Maddison's got up to that 8 million mark. I think that's interesting. I don't think anyone can really be that annoyed that he's that much money, but the fact that Barnes is now 1 million less is very interesting, because I think, not last season, but in previous seasons, I kind of favoured Barnes over Maddison. Now, I will say last year, I did come round to everyone else's thinking that Maddison was a slightly better option, but if we monitor it over the first kind of 5 to 6 weeks, just to see how they're playing, what the form's looking like, their underlying numbers and stuff like that, it might actually be worth, when Leicester's fixtures are good, going for Barnes for 1 million less than Maddison. Obviously, it's all going to depend on how the squad setups are, but I don't think, because of the price difference now, that Maddison is the no-brainer pick, right? He's a very good pick for sure, and obviously if you're swapping in your £8 million players, if you're getting rid of Mount, Saka or Diaz and you want to go straight to Maddison, that's fine. But I think Barnes could represent pretty decent value. With Jamie Vardy, I feel like the last few seasons he's just been at this awkward price point where there's always another player you want to go for, even though Vardy seems to continue doing well. He's another year older. I'm sure he's going to absolutely smash it again this season. But at 9.5 million with those opening fixtures, I just don't see where he fits in. Like when people are going for Salah, they're probably going for one other premium. It's probably not going to be Vardy. But the thing is, he continues to perform at a level where they can't really price him any less to like really entice us. Like if he was 8.5, I think people would give him serious consideration from the get-go, right? Brentford at home, Southampton at home, opening 3. When Jamie Vardy's 8.5, suddenly it looks okay. But I can see why they haven't gone that low, because his pedigree and his continuance when he's fit to score goals has just been incredible. So it's probably a fair price. But I think there are some players in FPL. I've talked a lot about how cheap players are. With Vardy, I do feel like they could price him a little bit more to entice people from the get-go. I understand that not everyone has to be an option in game week 1. Like there will be times when Vardy at 9.5 could be decent throughout the season. But could he be a little bit lower just to kind of, yeah, like I said, entice people in? Maybe. But given his pedigree, given the penalties, he's decent. He's a decent price. Elsewhere, Schmeichel comes in at 5 million. I mean, a lot of people got very excited about Mendy's price at 5 million. And some people did point out that he was at African Cup of Nations, so he did miss some minutes, hence his lower points tally. But if you look at his points per match compared to other goalkeepers, still wasn't that great. And I think Schmeichel was slightly ahead of him. So 5 million is an okay price. I think more interesting is the fullbacks all at 4.5, or a couple of the fullbacks at 4.5 million. So Justin and Ricardo, Fofana as well. One thing with Leicester, their expected goals conceded was awful last year. The defence was really poor. They actually almost became a team to look at targeting, but they did have a lot of defender injuries, right? Fofana, Evans missed lots of minutes. Castagna was injured at times. Ricardo too. So I think we have to expect some improvement from Leicester. So I'm very interested in their defenders at 4.5. It's just all about that rotation. If Castagna, Ricardo and Justin are all fit, and Thomas is as well, we might see some rotation in those fullback positions. And Fofana's okay at 4.5, but it is probably the fullbacks at Leicester you want. So yeah, they do represent potential good value. Daka and Iheanacho, if Vardy gets injured and one of them gets gets the starting number 9 position week in, week out, that could represent incredible value. But we all know at the start of the season, they're probably not going to be an option, but one to keep an eye on. So I don't know if they just ran out of time, but they didn't do any fancy kind of FPL graphics for the players for Crystal Palace. This is how it was presented on the Crystal Palace website. It is worth noting that the fixtures are not fantastic. We are probably not going to start with any of these players because they've got to face Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City. There will just be better options with better fixtures, but it doesn't mean they're never going to be in our teams, right? Because I think the prices are looking pretty good. Now, I'll be honest, right? We're still a month out from the season starting, so there's plenty of time to do research. Guaita was the number 1 last year. They have signed Johnson as well. I don't know if that will change things. We'll have to wait and see in pre-season, but I can't imagine that any of the goalkeepers are going to be more than 4.5 million for Crystal Palace if Guaita is 4.5. I actually think that's a really good price because Crystal Palace defence improved a lot last year. Now, annoyingly, the fixtures are so bad, you probably won't want to go from him from the get-go unless you're doing 4.5 million rotating goalkeepers, which most people don't do these days. That was always a thing back in the day, not so much now. But I'm already thinking if we have an early wild card when they've got a lot of their bad fixtures already out of the way, he could be an option at 4.5 if you don't fancy the 5 or 5.5 million goalkeepers. So he's one to keep an eye on. A lot of the other defenders are kind of 4.5 apart from Tompkins, which is 4. And then the attackers are really nicely priced. So Zaha's 7. He seems to be the most expensive one. And then Edouard, Mateta, Elise and Eze are all 5.5. Now, obviously, one thing we saw from Crystal Palace last year was a bit of rotation. So you didn't necessarily have an attacker outside Zaha, hence his price, plus he's on penalties. That you can necessarily rely on. But again, if there's an injury or something, or if we see that there is a player that looks to be first choice and it's one of those for 5.5, that represents potentially really good value, especially when you look at the strikers. Like, there's a lot right now at 6.5 and below that we've seen that I just don't really like the look of. I'm already thinking, how can I get up to the kind of £7 million mark? So to have maybe a Crystal Palace forward for 5.5 or even a midfielder to not have Neto or something like that, they could be good options, but we're going to have to wait and see how they start the season. Obviously, they won't have players like Gallagher either this year because he's gone back to Chelsea. Once the fixtures are gone, how well are they performing? Who's starting? They could be options. So I really like the Crystal Palace prices. The players are just probably not going to be an option straight away. So I'm just going to be completely honest with you, right? Newly promoted sides, I still need to do a lot of research on them to see what the options are looking like. I'm hoping to do a video with someone else on the channel throughout pre-season. I will say, with Bournemouth, the fact, again, a bit like Palace, they've got Man City and Liverpool away, opening 4 fixtures, and Arsenal at home, means I probably don't need to worry about how good any of them are, because they are not going to make my Game Week 1 squad, so I can see how they set up, who's looking good, what positions they're playing, and make a decision either later on to maybe bring in when the fixtures clear up, or on the first wildcard. So I'm not really too worried about them. Solanke comes in at 6 million to give us another kind of cheaper striker option. I've seen quite a bit of debate on Twitter about whether or not he's any good. Some people obviously still remember in previous days in the Premier League saying he's not great. Some have said he's improved quite a lot. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you that I've watched any of the Championship last year, so I will get the research done when we start like deep diving into different players. Maybe an option at some point at 6 million, but again, not going to be from day one. And obviously the same, I know I keep saying about it, I'm not trying to be too negative, but pretty much no defenders from the promoted teams are going to be options straight away because there's so many good established players already at 4.5 or even at 5 million. So Travers, Zamora, any of these 4.5 million defender options, just probably not going to go with them. And then there are a few 5.5 million options. Again, probably, I think Neto is very popular right now because people think that he's going to get a lot of starts. And also the fixtures are very good, right, for Wolves. And that is part of it. It's not that people are looking at Neto thinking he's this world beater player. It's that he's 5.5 million. If we want premium defence and Salah and one of Haaland, Kane and Son and then a few other maybe £8 million midfielders, at some point you have to put an enabler in there, and the chances are the 5.5 million midfielders will be better than the forwards, and Neto probably has the best fixtures out there. Wolves opening 6 fixtures, apart from I think they've got Spurs, are really decent. So again, even if these Bournemouth 5.5 million midfielders are decent, with those fixtures, I just don't think you can go with them straight away. Maybe if you're a Bournemouth fan and you want to put one in, that's absolutely fair enough, right? They're back in the Premier League. But I think for most of us, they're just going to be a wait and see. And in some ways, I like that because you don't necessarily want to take too many punts on too many promoted players just in case it goes really bad. So I think getting to wait and see is probably a good thing. So yeah, probably not too many options from the get-go, but let's see what happens. Let's get the research done in pre-season and maybe I'll change my mind. Okay, let's take a look at Everton. Obviously a side that nearly got relegated last year. They've lost Richarlison as well. Time will tell whether they're going to replace him, whether they're going to use the players that are already at the club, and that might dictate who we go for. Fixtures-wise, they're not that bad, right? I know the first 6 are kind of bookended with Chelsea in game week 1, Liverpool in game week 6, but the fixtures in between are okay. So if you're going to get a player for a short period of time, maybe the first 4 to 5 game weeks, especially if they were an attacker, I don't think it would be all that bad. The problem is, a lot of the players have been priced according to performances last year. So Gordon got a much-deserved kind of increase in price, and the defenders got a big decrease in price because their defence was awful. But for some reason, Calvert-Lewin is still 8 million, and for me, that makes absolutely no sense. Now, some people on Twitter are speculating that perhaps there's going to be some rule changes, which means that although the wing-backs and stuff like that in defence look really good right now, maybe they won't be quite as good, or maybe there'll be some kind of rule change which make forwards better. I don't think any of that's going to happen given how FPL kind of do things. I just think this is probably bad pricing, right? And I think if that is the case, if there isn't any kind of overhaul to the scoring or even some slight subtle changes, then I think Calvert-Lewin for 8 million is a mistake. I kind of see why they've done it because, you know, not last season when he was injured a lot, but the season before, he did really well. Without Richarlison, he'll be on penalties as well, and those fixtures are pretty good. But he seemed like an obvious player to put at 7.5 million, like Watkins, like Antonio, etc., etc. At 8 million, you've basically just priced him out. And again, I know I've said this a lot on these videos the last few days, that not every player has to be an option from game week 1, but Calvert-Lewin's not even a decision, right? I look at those fixtures, Calvert-Lewin's 7 or 7.5, I give him serious consideration. At 8 million, I can get Saka, I can get Mason Mount, I can get Luis Diaz. For $1 million less, I can get Robertson, I can get Trent. He's just priced out of the game unless there is an overhaul to how the scoring works. So I don't like that price. I think in a time when so many people are looking for those premium defenders, they should be finding a way, outside of scoring maybe, to make us look at forwards, and that is done by reducing the price. So Calvert-Lewin at 8, Bamford at 7.5, these players are a little bit too expensive. You put all of them at 7, or maybe Calvert-Lewin at 7.5, Antonio to 7, Watkins to 7, people start taking more notice of them. At 7.5 and above, people, for the most part, will just ignore him. So I think Calvert-Lewin is too expensive. Gordon at 5.5 is okay. Maybe with those fixtures, he's going to be a bit of a rival to Neto if he's kind of nailed on, etc. for that kind of price. The only thing is, he was a really good enabler for us last year. His attacking numbers, underlying data, expected goals, expected assists, not that great. And I don't know if his output for FPL will actually be that good. The only thing is he's young, so he could obviously improve this year. I'm not sure how much I trust Lampard, though. That's the problem with targeting Everton. They were really bad last year. I don't think Lampard made them any better. So are they going to be good going into this year? I just don't think I can trust them. So Pickford at 4.5. Plenty of saves, I'm sure. Maybe if they get... Obviously, they've got Tarkowski now. If their defence does improve, maybe he'll be an okay shout in the goalkeeper position. But I think you've really got to trust that Lampard can kind of turn things around rather than just about saving them from kind of relegation. So looking at the rest, look, there's a bunch of other 5.5 million midfielders. Decore, Gray, Iwobi and Dele Alli. They're all 5.5 and all the defenders look to be 4.5 as well. So Tarkowski will be an improvement for sure in that Everton defence. I just don't think... it's not that I don't think. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. So again, there's lots lots of 4.5 million defenders to choose from. There's probably a lot of better ones as well. But realistically, again, we're all going to be going for those premiums anyway. So it's not really a conversation to be having. So possibly Pickford, maybe Gordon. Outside of that, I just don't see many options right away for Everton. So Nottingham Forest were the last team to be revealed, so I wanted to get them included in this video before I set it live. For some reason on social media, they only put out 6 images. They did release a few more prices on their website. I'm not going to go into them. It's not that interesting, really. They did basically confirm that they do have some 4.5 million midfielders. I know some people have been worried that FPL haven't been revealing any like 4.5 million forwards or midfielders, probably because they're just not that interesting, right? They're just bench fodder, but it does seem like they're in the game. We already know there's some £4 million defenders as well, so we are going to have all that lovely bench fodder that we need to build out the rest of our team and get the money into the first 11. Now Nottingham Forest, a bit like the other promoted sides, we'll do a bit more research as we go, but again the fixtures aren't looking that great. You could say the first 3 are okay, and obviously they got Bournemouth in game week 6, but that Spurs and Man City fixture in 4 and 5 will probably put quite a few people off. We'll just mostly talk here again, the 4.5 million defenders, whatever really. I think the 2 interesting players are the 2 on the left, right? So you got Brennan Johnson, and I think the other one is pronounced something like Awani, which I probably got wrong, so I will learn that as we move forward. But I had a look at his numbers. So he's a new signing, come from the Bundesliga. The numbers, expected goals, expected assists combined, look pretty good. Obviously, you got to take that with a pinch of salt, right? He's coming into the Premier League, also coming into a team that are probably going to be fighting for relegation as well. But it's promising, and at 6 million he could be an option at some point. Brennan Johnson again pretty much nailed. Looking at how they lined up last year, he seemed to often be in a 2 up front. From what I've kind of read, they might move away from that formation, and Brennan Johnson might actually essentially be a midfielder, right? So playing off the left and right. It looks like he can play anywhere across the front 3. That doesn't necessarily matter just because he's a forward, but obviously if he is going to play in those positions, we maybe would have preferred him being a midfielder. And obviously if either of these players were 5.5 million, that might make them a bit more enticing. So they've kind of priced them on, you know, the side of caution almost at 6 million. I don't think we're going to be seeing them in too many game week 1 squads, but they're both promising prospects. And maybe if you decide to not have 5 at the back because you want a 4.5 million defender as a good bench option, because one of the things with going 5 premiums, you don't get that 4.5 million defender for your bench, and there will almost certainly be no good 4.5 million mids or forwards that get regular minutes and or kind of score goals, so or get assists. So really that defender can be kind of useful just in case one of your players misses out. So in that case, if you need an enabler and you didn't like the midfielders, maybe one of these comes into your team as a 6 million forward, but I think they'd be a bit more enticing if they were 5.5 million. So yeah, any Forest fans, let me know if they got pronunciation wrong or right, and also let me know about kind of the way they're going to set up, because from what I heard and kind of read, Johnson might go into one of the wider positions, and Awani, the new signing, will probably be the more central striker. I don't know, maybe you'll continue with 2 up front. Let me know in the comments. So that's all the price reveals done from all 20 teams. Surely the game will launch tomorrow. I feel like we've been saying that for a little while now, but hopefully we're finally there. Just some more kind of general thoughts on the prices, right? I do think the majority of them are okay. Obviously, sometimes it's hard to talk about how good or bad a price is without knowing the rest of the players. There's obviously a bit of kind of consensus from FPL to get a lot of midfielders like the Sakas, Madisons, Mount, etc. all at the same price. You've got a decision to make. So I'm sure when I make my drafts, at least at the start, if I've got an £8 million slot for a midfielder, I probably won't put too much thought into who that is. I'll just know that I've got to pick one of them by the time we get to the deadline. Ultimately, I don't think there's a huge amount of players that are kind of like grossly under or overpriced. Again, I think Trent is underpriced for sure. In general, I think the defenders probably could come up a little bit. I know that if you put Trent and Cancelo and Robertson kind of £8 million plus, then it makes the gap to the 4.5 million defenders even more. But maybe for the points they score, they should be more expensive. That's maybe a topic of discussion for a podcast or something like that. And then the likes of Bamford, possibly slightly overpriced. I think they could have made him 7 just to make him a bit more attractive. If he has a season like he did a couple of seasons ago, then that 7.5 million price will be fine. But I just think they need to kind of entice people more towards forwards and maybe midfielders just because of how popular the defenders are. But overall, pretty good. I'm sure once we start putting teams together, we'll be 0.5 million short here. We'll be shaving off a bit of money in one position to get it elsewhere. So it won't be as easy as we think, but I do think we'll be able to get a lot of quality players into our drafts. Anyway, my plan now is to get this video finished, get it out and live so you can watch it. Tomorrow, if it launches, we might do like a reaction video or possibly a reaction stream, and then I'll probably try and get a first draft video out that same day. If not, it'll be the next day. Then obviously we'll get all the usual pre-season content out as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. If you have enjoyed these kind of 4 days of price reveal chat, please do give the video a like and hit that subscribe button. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I will catch you tomorrow for the launch of FPL 22-23. Let's look forward to it. I'll catch you then.